Hello, hello. This is Christina Barney watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about, and came out a bit ago, but we're just addressing it today. Um, Richard Dawkins had said some things about, celebrating as Ramadan over like Easter and stuff, and how it upset him because he considers himself to be a cultural Christian, even though he's a very famous atheist. And uh, you're kind of seeing the consequences of rejecting that kind of basis for morality and stuff, pushing it out. And even though you might want to profit off the benefits of the religion and not believe, they've done more than just kind of say, I don't believe it. Some of these new atheists have really pushed, that Christianity in itself is immoral. So there was people who pulled away and argued against it. Now you're kind of seeing the fruit of that labor, and they don't like it. And these people would rather live in a Christian nation than, an Islamic one or whatever. And they don't want to see the West kind of turn into others. Well, you'll see the interview when we get to it, that section. But yeah, there's consequences for those sorts of actions. Also, I want to talk about The View and some comments that they made about abortion and the 10 Commandments and stuff. So no surprise they said something dumb, but we'll get into that. And also, I want to play for you guys this clip of it was on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about the war in Israel and the civilian numbers and all kinds of different stuff like that. And before we jump into it, I would encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It does cost to stream and run my website on the so you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it. You guys can check out different merch on my website and go ahead and check that out. Different mugs and t-shirts and so on. I saw a comment on I guess it was my big saga video with about Candace and Ben and their beef that I posted back in November. And someone very briefly in my intro, I mentioned my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. And someone in the comments was like, free will, pro-choice. And I'm like, guys, that's like the absolute dumbest reason. One, God, there's free will. But God has this whole thing about what you ought to do and that you'll be punished for doing bad things. So yeah, if a woman really wants to have an abortion, or if a doctor wants to help her get one, etc., like maybe there's no way to really stop someone from doing that. It would incentivize people not to do it. But if they just go ahead and do it, then punishment or whatever. Repercussions for that doctor and so on. You go that route. But the Bible isn't, everybody, you got free will, just do everything that you want to. And they bring that up with abortion, but they don't bring it up for the free will. People should be allowed to rape. Like, they don't do that. So it's crazy to me. I don't know if that's the worst argument, but people bring it up all the time. I'm like, that's the easiest one to think through. That is the easiest one to think through. But people who are atheists will go that route, and people who claim to be Christian will bring that up. And then when you bring up other examples of, okay, well, do you think it's okay to steal and commit sexual assault? And they'll be like, heavens no. Well, it's bad reasons, guys. Just think it through just a little bit more. Anyway, if you guys are watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. Watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. And if you're watching back later, you guys can send super thanks. And thank you to those of you watching live and to those of you who will watch it back later. So, um, I want to start off by talking about this clip of Dawkins, and that was going around already some time. So you probably I don't know how much content you guys watch besides mine about political stuff or religious stuff, but maybe you've already seen this clip by now. I had wanted to talk about it, just didn't get a chance yet because I went on a little vacay anyway. But I saw this meme when I was scrolling through my likes, and so I was like, let me talk about this. So this was from the Babylon Bee, and posted this meme of Dawkins like shooting Christianity, saying, "Why are there Ramadan lights?" So people are inherently religious. They'll worship something at the it's amazing reading the Bible and just seeing how many times the Israelites messed up, and they're just like, "Oh, this God just delivered us out of the hands of the Egyptians. Let's make a statue out of gold." It's so silly. So people just, I don't know, they'll find a way to idolize something, and whether it's a golden calf or whether it's some kind of other um kind of more obvious form of pagan worship, whether it's the worship of the science or people putting so much stock into political stuff like the environmental stuff. Like Ben, his show, he was talking about people. Well, he did also bring up The View and how Sunny was just like, oh, we have things like solar eclipses, and kind of related them to like climate change. And it's like, bruh, how did climate change make the eclipse? I only knew about this for a long time. Eclipses happen, but they're sunny for you. They're sunny for you. And they put so much stock into these other beliefs that it becomes sort of what they serve. And atheists, are very passionate. Not all of them. Some of them are kind of like, whatever, and it doesn't bother them. But there's so many ex-evangelicals or atheists that are so militant about their cause that they evangelize it more than a lot of Christians will evangelize the gospel. And it's so peculiar. There's a song that Stacey Orico put out years ago, called Stuck on You. It's like, I can't take it. What am I waiting for? My heart's still breaking. I miss you even more, and I can't fake it the way I could be. So I hate you, but I love you. I can't stop thinking of you. It's true, I'm stuck on you. So anyway, I thought about taking that "I hate you and I love you" part and just being like, this is how ex-evangelicals are like, because they are not over it. They're still stuck about, things that they claim aren't real. And most of these cases, it's surrounded by some kind of church hurt, and then they rationalize the gospel not being real because something happened that they didn't like. So then they have to kind of start mutating reality around their thoughts and their feelings. And it becomes less about what's true and more about my truth. So anyway, Dawkins, longtime atheist, but people were quite interested because he said he considered himself to be a cultural Christian and had an issue with Christianity as a kind of a culture thing going down. So let me go ahead and show you guys that clip. In case you did not see it.
Slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically, the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it would matter if we certainly, if we substituted any alternative religion, that would be truly dreadful.
Well, which brings me to my supplementary point, which is that, as we know, church attendance is plummeting, but the erection of mosques across Europe, I think 6,000 are under construction, and there are many more, are being planned. So do you regard that as a problem? Do you think that matters?
Yes, I do really. I mean, I don't. I must choose my words carefully. I mean, if I had to choose between Christianity and Islam, I choose Christianity every single time. I mean, it seems to me to be a fundamentally decent religion, in a way that I think Islam is not.
I think you're going to have to explain why you say that, Professor Dawkins. Why is Islam fundamentally not decent like Christianity?
Yes, I mean the way women are treated. I mean, Christianity is not great about that. It's had its problems with female vicars and female bishops and things, but there's an active hostility to women, which is promoted, I think, by the holy books of Islam. I'm not talking about individual Muslims, who, of course, are quite different, but the doctrines of Islam, the Hadith and the Quran, is fundamentally hostile to women, hostile to gays. And I find that I like to live in a culturally Christian country, although I do not believe a single Christian faith.
So there is Dawkins for you. So you can't, there's people who've gone out there to demolish people's faith. Obviously, Dawkins is one of those people. It's not a matter of just, I don't believe. It's a matter of like coming at Christianity to tear it down. And so if there's more atheists in the world and people are less inclined to protect the morals of Christianity that you kind of see around you, and what has been kind of built around it, he's to blame for that. He is not solely, but yes, it's on him and other, atheists who made a career out of it. Now, when people will ask me, they'll say, "Oh, Christina, your family, you all get along. There's 7 of us, and we're all our parents' kids. They were virgins when they got married, and we lived peaceably together. Most of us, we all lived together until 2014. And everybody was still kind of grown, and then we, some of us, moved out for jobs and things like that. But we lived peaceably together, and people were always kind of wondering, like, how did you guys kind of have this functional family? And that it's the Bible. Like Dawkins says, he doesn't believe a word about in a single word in the faith. That's some heavy bias there, which can explain why you're losing this culture that you enjoy, but you don't believe a single word. Now, if you don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead and is God, or that God exists, yeah, those are pretty big things in the Christian faith. Sure. But what about the ethics that are taught along with it? So one thing that my mom was adamant about, there's a scripture about don't let the sun go down on your wrath. So if we had a disagreement, she did not want that stuff carried over into the next day. She did not. So it'd be like, the sun's going down, sun went down, go pray or something, you know? So she would not allow that dysfunction in her home. She put her foot down. My dad tells a story, like one time he got into a disagreement with my mom. And so he was, praying, and he's like, God, you deal with her and rebuke the devil in her. And he's like, rebuke the devil in you. And he's like, oh. and the Lord just kind of told him, like, she's already over it. She's already over it. And I'm not saying we didn't solve conflict and come together or anything like that, and we didn't have resolutions, but we didn't, because we did. Many times we went before dad to be like, she did this, like, especially if it was me and my younger sister Sabrina. I would always be like, in the right, guys. And you're like, you're always against me. It's like, you're always wrong. But anyway, so we did bicker sometimes, but we did know how to solve conflict, but we knew how to not let conflict dissolve our family. I talked yesterday about the OnlyFans, a top OnlyFans girl who left OnlyFans, shut down her page, but she had made like 9 million when she was in. She came from a background of church and of being a pastor's kid. And, I mentioned how some of the things in our lives were similar, because she did a lot of the tasks and stuff that pastors' kids have to do. You have to, greet people. You have to be in the choir. You have to do stuff to support, et cetera, et cetera. But my parents both always understood that that the gospel is top tier, that saving souls and ministering to people is of the priority, but your family is also a ministry. Your family is also a ministry, and you cannot forget that. So we had a nice balance that I think it's pretty obvious that she didn't have, that how you treat your kids is a part of ministry. How you treat your wife is a part of your ministry. That there's instructions that God has given to people about how to have a happy home, how to have a happy family. So when people are like, oh, what has religion done for you? I'm like, I could list many things, including things that are miraculous. But I could tell you just some practical knowledge that we followed, and it's made our lives abundantly better. Things about how to treat your wife, treat your husband, that my parents followed, about, how to discipline your kids, but not make your kids, provoke them to wrath. So there's so much wisdom in the Bible, and so many things about charity. Christians are very charitable, hospitals and all sorts of different things, really pushed by Christians. Dominated that space. We saw a movie earlier this year about Caprini. Is it Caprini or Cabrini? I don't remember if it's a B or P, but she is like the patron saint of like immigrants or something. But see, now the movie, obviously they embellished and made things up for the film, but she was passionate about people and wanted to build all these hospitals, and they put them all over the world. Caring for the sick, for the needy, for the poor. Those are things that are important within the gospel. So to say that you don't believe a single word of it, if you're throwing the Bible away, what about all of that morality that's in it? And where are you getting your sense of morality? Because he's looking around saying, I want to live in a Christian country, even though I don't like Christianity. Okay. There's a lot of like moral things on the conservative side where people might not be kind of living up to that sort of thing, but they're like, okay, but I still like conservative values and I want to uplift those. I'm like, because we'll say like conservatism, we'll say preserving or conserving Judeo-Christian values or something like that. But you might be an atheist And you're like, okay, but I still like that stuff and I'm going to uplift and try to protect it. But Dawkins doesn't, he might, and I guess the past couple of years, maybe because I was watching David Wood talk about this a little bit, and there was some tweets or whatever about be careful about like celebrating like Christianity going down, because they're like, we might miss it when it's gone, or what it's replaced, or we might be concerned about what's what the people replace it with. But he's had a long career, and even in this, again, that statement that he's making, he doesn't believe a single word. A single word. I can understand you don't believe that the evidence points to there being a God or Jesus rising from the dead and being God himself. If all those things aren't clicking, though, Dawkins, seeing a couple of conversations, it seems like he doesn't really want things to click, but they haven't clicked. But it's just they're the big main things, granted. But who Jesus was in the text and is, he wouldn't say is because he, probably just looks at him as a historical person, which I think he's even denied at times, but then had to like backtrack it. But even things in the Old Testament, New Testament, there's so many good values within the book. Like he mentioned in that clip that he prefers Christianity to Islam because he thinks Christianity is better for women, even though he thinks there's still issues and problems. He mentioned, like, I guess not having female bishops and stuff. Well, there's a debate within the Christianity world about egalitarianism and complementarianism, which, egalitarianism would say like, oh, men and women can do the same thing, which complementarianism was like, no, they can't do the same thing. They have different roles, but those roles work together and coincide. So I would say more of the complementary approach. But like, there's so many things in the Bible that are so uplifting for women and men, and even if you look at like Proverbs 31, for example, when it talks about what a virtuous woman is, there's so many things in here that describe a woman as being an entrepreneur and being someone that her husband is like a pillar of the community of her household. Like this is Proverbs 31, starting at the 10th verse. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like a merchant ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She rideth also while it is yet night. She giveth meat to her household and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field and buyeth it. So this is a woman who has her business in check, who has her family in order, financially, ethically. With the fruit of her hands, she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength and strengthen her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor. So the charity. She reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates. When he sitteth among elders of the land, she maketh fine linen and selleth it. So it's just got all these things about, it doesn't say she's just barefoot and pregnant. Like, families were businesses. They work together to live life and survive and build civilizations and stuff. So her strength and honor are her clothing. There's a lot of women out here who don't have strength and honor, guys. And she shall rejoice in the time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is a law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of the idleness. Her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. So there's a lot of great things that Dawkins is, I'm assuming he probably just kind of skipped over within the Bible. So yeah, when people are like, how'd your family, be able to live peaceably together? Because we study the word. And I know there's a lot of people who, maybe they're not Christians or whatever, and they live peaceably, but that's the secret sauce. That's the secret sauce. There's so many great things within the Bible that have impacted our world positively. And Dawkins has been a part of coming at Christianity, but when it's gone, other things will replace it, because we're not just going to be like, oh, there's nothing out there. We are inherently religious beings, and we will find something to praise. We will find something to worship. And people do with politics, people do with, and oh gosh, the how much people pour into the idolatry of environmentalism and climate change and all kinds of stuff, scientism, new age stuff. People find a way to cling to something higher than themselves. But to quote Frank Turek and many other people that ask, like, where's your sense of morality coming from? And the truth is that lots of folks have their morality, even whether they are religious or not, they are heavily impacted by the virtues of the Bible. They are. Justice system, many things are enacted or inspired by the virtues of Christianity. And you live in a society where you have benefited off of what was built there. And people will say, like, oh no, we can reason morality some kind of other way, but you can't justify it. Let's say you can make up a standard. You can't like justify it totally, because it's subjective. You're going to decide it. You're going to decide. We're going to debate it. It's going to be on a scale or what. Christians would say, like, no, we have objective morality because God is who defines what it is. Well, you don't want to adhere to what Christianity has, built up. So now, again, something else is coming in to replace it. They're talking about all these mosques that are being built, and, people coming in. They are immigrating into the UK, and they are having families at a rate that other, non-religious folks particularly are not. So yes, they will replace you, and you will see more stuff about Ramadan than you will other holidays and whatnot. There will be takeovers in that sense. So unless you're going to get on the conversion train where people need to, start converting people to Christianity and build up back attendance and other things in the church, you're going to have an issue. You're going to have an issue. So this is the world that you built. You've helped to build. So what are you going to do about it? Just, complain, I guess. But something interesting about Dawkins saying stuff about, I talked about this recently. I saw a clip of him talking about how atheists can reason about morality or whatever, and you don't need God as a source. And I'm like, I wonder what he said about abortion. So I just Googled him, and there was a horrific tweet that he made about Down syndrome kids. Kind of like well, you kind of have to abort him. Let me see if I can find it really quick. He kind of walked it back, but it was bad. Like he said it was like immoral to have a child with Down syndrome. And I'm like, this is where your morality gets you and your reason. Okay, I found it. Let me share with you guys. This was wild to me. I just knew there had to be something like that. I'm like, where's his morality on that? Richard Dawkins, I honestly don't know what I would do if I were pregnant with a kid with Down syndrome. Real ethical dilemma. And he said, abort it and try again. It would be immoral to bring it into the world if you have the choice. Immoral. So people were upset about something like that. By what standard is he saying it's immoral to bring a human being into existence people with Down syndrome? I'm not saying they don't have challenges or it's not challenging to take care of people who have Down syndrome. That doesn't mean that they have less value because they need more kind of time and care than other kids. But if you look at different polling for like their level of happiness, they are some happy people. So who's it? Why is it immoral? Dawkins. But that's where his sense of morality takes him to. Only the strong survive. I guess. That's where his sense of morality takes him to. So guys, you have to be careful about what you're advocating for. Like the conversation with Pearl Davis, who I've talked about past couple days, because she didn't respond well to Michael Knowles' interview with a former OnlyFans girl, but who found the Lord, and she really doubts her conversion, and it just has an issue with women who had sexual pasts and even come reformed anyway, and she kind of thinks they need to be broken goods forever, and not so many words, but she was debating Michael. I don't know if I said Matt. I think I said Knowles, but it was Michael Knowles. About marriage, and Knowles, and we went live through this. So if you guys want to go back and watch my reaction to some of the bits of the live stream, you guys can do that. But the Knowles pointed out that Pearl's solutions lead to more degeneracy. About like, because she didn't want to tell men what they should do, but she says, well, men shouldn't get, she wouldn't say shouldn't, but basically she's making the argument that men won't get married, and it's bad for them to get married as long as women are incentivized to leave marriages and stuff. And so he pointed out that he thinks that divorce is bad, and that she's basically just pitching that divorce should just be better for everybody. Like that's what she was really advocating for. But she's saying in the men shouldn't get married, and he's like, okay, but men have certain inclinations. They have sexual desires. Women have sexual desires, but men have, women can have very high sex drives and stuff, but men, they tend to be more sexual creatures. And they still have a drive to want to have kids and other kind of stuff like that. So if you're saying like men shouldn't get married in the meantime, or implying that men shouldn't get married, what should be done in the meantime? What are they going to do? Because she's not saying marriage sucks, so be a celibate turtle hermit or something like that. That's not Pearl's pitch. That's not the pitch of these red pill folks. So what is it? Just degeneracy? That's the outcome of not trying to protect this institution of marriage, is just encouraging more degeneracy. One of the Fresh and Fit guys it was fresh. Over the weekend, his girlfriend, who I guess is a hooker or something, an Asian lady of the night, but he was with her, leaked, I don't know if it was a leak. She released text messages from her and him about her saying that she was pregnant and he wanted her to take the pill and have an abortion. And she also recorded him, and he was like, she's like, it's a baby. And he said, no, just take a pill. And really immoral and ignorant. It is a baby. And she was like, the abortion is going to kill it. He's like, no, it's just a pill. You just take a pill. What do you think the pill does? What do you think the pill does? So she's not innocent by any means in this. And I would recommend to people to not sleep around, period. But don't sleep around, especially with women like her. But definitely don't sleep around with men like him. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. But this is just sort of what happens when you promote degeneracy. And you can say, well, men need to step up, but men need to step up and be moral and control their passions. Just as women need to do that as well. And hopefully people make decisions and they come together in holy matrimony and create families and continue to build up civilization in a good sort of manner. But that's not what you have going on. You have these people who sleep around, and then they're like, well, I'm taking responsibility by saying that you should kill the baby. I'm of the opinion that men who support abortion and don't have the balls to fight for their children don't deserve them. But I think it's one of the most unattractive things you can do is not stand up for your kids. So I can't. I don't like abortion. Period. But I guess I have a special kind of bias toward pro-choice men. I'm just like, it is so extravagantly anti-masculine to feel that way about your heirs, your offspring, your seed. It's just gross. But I won't say much more about it because I wanted to see like the full video of them talking about it. And I did start listening to her talk about it. And they just all sound like awful people who did terrible things. But you could exercise some restraint and induce some morality back into things. But these red pill dudes, it's like, oh, these women are awful. Oh, these women are trash. Oh, these women need to take responsibility. Okay, but they won't be responsible themselves. One thing I hate about watching the whatever podcast, and we'll see the clips that come out and the women saying the dumb things or the really, unrealistic expectations about their professions when they do the OnlyFans and expecting to just, I don't know, do whatever in life and not have issues. Now you can have positive stories and, and hopefully more happier endings like Nala did getting out, but she left because she felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit. And then she got married, which, so kudos to her. I pray that her journey with the Lord is fruitful and everlasting. But you'll see these crazy clips they'll talk about feminism and abortion and all kinds of stuff. And you're like, man, these girls, and people will laugh and point and whatever. But I hate that these dudes will come on the show and they'll talk about the girls, but they're just living a life of debauchery themselves. and they don't have any control over themselves. And they'll talk about girls and their body count like they have lost all their value because of their high body count, but they will go and create girls that have high body counts. They'll just keep sleeping around themselves and just create this moral dilemma, this monster that they don't want anything to do with in the long term, because they want a more traditional woman who hasn't, been ran through, as they'll say, when they decide to settle down after they've did the running, they did the jousting all their lives. And it's the women who are wrong. No, you're both wrong. You're both wrong. That's why I don't like, a lot of Pearl's content, because I'm like, women do need to take accountability, but we shouldn't sell victimhood to men. Like, there's dudes absolutely getting a raw deal in life, politically, legally, and stuff. And we can address those things, but it's not good to make men into the victims. Like, in her conversation with Knowles, like, every time there was a conversation about men, it was just like, oh, well, the women do this, or like they talked about she asked the question, can women be led, can men lead women who don't want to be led? And Michael's like, yes, you can't. They can't, because of, and she's like, I don't believe that. And he said, you are underestimating the power of men in persuasion. Now, some women, yeah, maybe you can't, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. But if men are supposed to be leaders, and then you're just like, well, they just can't be led unless people will just, be nice little sheep and get behind them. Do you think that's what leaders just do? they just kind of slide into leadership. I'm not saying that women shouldn't be submissive, but men need to know how to lead, not just wait to fail and say it's the woman's fault. So and a lot of women, some women are just the worst, okay? True. But some women are waiting for a man who can lead them, who's worth getting behind. So these are things that people, if they had adhered to, going back to the original point of some structures, and they're laid out in the Bible, I would say they would get a better perspective on that. But if you start talking about things that you should do or ought to do, Pearl's response is, oh, do you think you're God, or something like that, or facts don't care about your religion. And those are things that she said. But you're just creating more problems. Like, someone said, why are you pressed about Pearl? I'm like, I'm pressed because I think her ideology is evil. And I said that particularly with how she views redemption and stuff like that. But for some of these girls who are ran through. But the sort of things that people are promoting without any sort of morality is pretty gross, guys. And it's not going to build a better world. Going back to Trump yesterday and his comments on abortion, we watched his announcement, and he was like, okay, it's up to the states, which he could have just said that and left it alone. But he's like, you have to follow your heart. You have to follow your heart. And when people say follow your heart, my first kind of thought is the Bible says the heart is deceitful, but okay. Maybe we should follow what's just. Maybe we should follow what's right, do what's right. And he could have said, the reality is that we are not in a place right now to settle this or do anything on a federal level. Or he could have just said, right now the reality is that it's in the state's hands. But it urged the people to do the right thing. But he didn't do that. He kind of was laid out there like, we need these exceptions, we need these other things. Republicans, we got to save our country. So just remember, like, if we can't save the culture if we don't win the elections. And the problem with that is that and I'm not saying it's not important to win the election, but I think he went steps too far. with his announcement. Even if you were just like, well, he made the pragmatic decision. I'm like, no, he took some extra steps he really shouldn't have. When you get to that point to wield the power and you've abandoned morality to do it, what sort of rule are you going to have? If you threw out goodness to get to where you are, and you're willing to, I guess, throw it out for power anyway, to go with what's popular, the will of the people, and what's in your heart. Because if you're not going to drive the cultural change yourself, what happens when you get to that top of the mountain? You're not holding the 10 Commandments there, sir. You're holding the statue of the cow. That's what's gonna It's like, Aaron, what were you doing? Like, that's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen. So if you want to throw out, just don't be surprised when you look back and you're at a kind of a point of no return. And I don't think we'll get to maybe a point of no return. I think you always got to fight and you got to do the right thing. Even if you think it's hopeless, you still have to fight and do the right thing. Abolitionists kept fighting after Dred Scott. Like, when we lost really bad in Michigan in the midterms, including having that abortion proposal change our constitution, I really, really leaned on the words of like Frederick Douglass and his speech that he gave after the Dred Scott case, and his attitude was that God's going to get the final say in all this. That was his attitude. That these people are, I see them, they're immoral. What they've done, what they've decided about my value as a human being, it's immoral, but they don't get the last say. God gets the last say. That was his attitude. That was his attitude. Not follow your heart. Because some people's hearts were invested in the financial gain of having slaves. That was their heart, their land, their property, their wife, their kids being secure, cotton. That was their heart. That was their heart. So if you want change to happen, you have to drive the change. You have to drive the change yourself. But if you abandon morality to get there, again, you're just stuck with the golden calf. Okay? Anyway, let's move on to The View, because we're kind of going in that vein anyway. So on The View, I have to be careful how I play this so we don't accidentally get disconnected from YouTube, since I'm playing ABC footage. But they talked about the abortion and the 10 Commandments. And it is so funny when people like don't use religion and then other people want to bring it up. So this happens all the time. So that's one of the reasons why I just wrote my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, because I'm just like, people are going to mention it anyway. I might as well just explain my position. And I also feel if it's right and it's just and it's true, then you shouldn't hide from it anyway. You should just battle the ideas regardless. Because what's people want to do? Say God gives us free will? That's really dumb. So if the truth is on your side, just use it. Because you'll see practical kind of real world benefits or whatever to it anyway. But anyway, let's look at what Whoopi said here. So there's two. I'm going to try to just stop it twice, because I think there's like two main things I want to kind of address.
One is obligated to have an abortion, so you never have to have one. And I hope no one ever has to have one. But if you find yourself in a position where you have to, I want to make sure And I'm way past having kids. I want to make sure, yes, way past. I want to make sure that if you decide this is what you need to do, I'm going to get behind you because I don't know your life. And if you say this is what you need, that's what I'm going to do. 50 weeks, 75,000 weeks, whatever, how many weeks, it's nobody's business. It's you, your doctor, and God. That's who you have to be.
So, yeah, that's where I want to pump the brakes right there. So, so she said whether it's like 50 weeks and so on. So I mentioned how Trump went like after birth or whatever, up to the time of birth, and that people will hone on and say that he's exaggerating, and they still will. But that's an example of someone who's just like, it doesn't matter what week it is. It could be week 39. It could be week 50. I mean, she's exaggerating, right? But the point is that she's willing to say it doesn't matter at what point. If you feel that you need it, you don't need to justify it. You can just have the abortion. Because I don't know your situation, which we could always find out the situation before we decide to do that. I mean, if you want to, there's so many things that you have to kind of justify before you do certain things. I think if you, even if we were going to make this something that, let's say, society was like, yeah, it's permissible. Don't you think that you should have like a really, 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 really good reason? A really, really good reason? Like if it's a necessary evil, which they don't look at it that way anymore. But shouldn't it be like option Z, like the very last thing? Like if it's like financial hardship, like, oh, well, let's try to help out that woman or something like that. Let's explore our options. But they don't want that. Like even a pregnancy crisis center, they're like, oh gosh, it's a bad thing that there's so many. That's what Elizabeth Warren said. My governor vetoed funds that were supposed to go to her pregnancy crisis centers. They don't want women to be persuaded to not in the lives of their children. So it's pretty gross, but that is the reality. But she's like any weeks. But this whole idea of if you just whatever you say, like if you need one, that's fine. But we don't have that attitude about many other things in life. Like if they were like talking to someone and they're like, well, why do you need a gun? Because I don't have to explain myself to you. No, that is actually a right. It is actually a right to bear arms. Right? But which Sonny is going to mention firearms in the second part. But they've had many anti-gun rants. These women on this panel, I don't think not all of them were there during COVID, but they were so hostile about COVID and people masking and vaccines and so on. Jedediah, I think that's her name, wasn't going on The View. And one episode, she was streaming in, and they're like, well, there's a reason why you're not in the studio. Why aren't you in the studio? And because she didn't want to take the jab. And she wanted to take the jab because I think they tested it and she had like reactions or something. So she physically just could not take it, or it was better for her not to take it. And so she explained to them why she wasn't going to take it. And then they went into this like, you're killing people. Sort of a hysteria. And so this whole, it doesn't matter if that's what you want, if that's what you need, which Whoopi has, I don't know how many she's had abortions, but she has had abortions. So I can understand why this is such a, important topic to her that is so personal. But they don't have that same energy for other stuff that is people's personal health care business at all. Even if you had a good reason, they were still upset about people not being vaccinated. So do you really care about people's health care? Do you really care about bodily autonomy? Because you can't. You can't. I cannot believe that we live in a country that allowed 2020 to happen in 2021 with all of the coercion, with the jobs and the vaccine passports and the lockdowns, the masks, all that stuff. And we have conversations about bodily autonomy when it comes to abortion, and we just memory hole that other stuff, and we take people seriously as as if the government, particularly the Democrats, and we can say the president right now, as if they actually care, about our freedoms. I recall Joe Biden quite literally saying it's not about your freedoms or your personal choice. That is literally what he said. And they felt that way because people's lives were at risk. Even though the vaccine couldn't prevent you from spreading it, they're still like, oh, lives are in jeopardy. You have to take the jab. You're a bad person. You're killing grandma if you don't. That was their mentality. But when it comes to this thing where you're literally killing a human being, your child, that's just whatever she needs. And it's not a matter of the baby's, well, it doesn't have a heartbeat yet, or, oh, it can't feel pain yet, or, oh, it's not conscious, because she said 50 weeks, 40,000 weeks, or whatever. So again, that was an exaggeration. But the point of that exaggeration is it doesn't matter how far along the pregnancy is. So there's no moral consideration for the child as long as it's inside the woman's body, which I'll give it to them. I think that is actually the only consistent position in the abortion argument. People saying, oh no, it's at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, what that stuff isn't consistent. I'm not going to get into all that today. But these women are wild. Absolutely wild. So let me get to the second part. I don't want to have a 2-hour show today. So let's keep going.
Conversational too, and it's not mentioned in the Big Ten. I'm just going to say,
no.
In the Big Ten, it is not mentioned.
The commandments?
Yeah, because I figured God was pretty clear. Here's the stuff that'll make your life better on earth. Here's the thing: don't lie, because you don't want people lying to you. Don't mess with somebody's wife, because you're going to be mad if they're messing with yours. Just,
the
common sense
would
stuff.
Say, thou shalt not kill. They believe that.
Yes, well, here's the thing. I think thou shalt not kill cannot be used as the block, because we allow wars all the time.
Yes, we do.
The Crusades
we allow the death penalty.
Were about all these things.
We allow guns.
Yes, so there is some conversation to be had here. So you can thou shalt not kill for everybody.
Yes.
And everything. Or we have to talk about all the things that you and I need to do. And I have to, I need to give you time to do this.
I have a legal note.
Straight face.
Okay, it's crazy that Sonny had to be the one to be like, no, the evangelicals would say, thou shalt not kill, which is actually thou shalt not murder. And yes. So the Bible does there are 10 commandments. That's true. In the Old Testament, though, there are many, many laws for the Israelites to follow, when you read the Bible. So there's more than 10, really. There's the 10 commandments, or would say carry over, but there's basically, I would say, things that God tells you to do are commandments, right? So I make the point in my book that if you are a Christian, I guess it doesn't really matter if you're a Christian, God's ultimate authority on morality and stuff, right? There's ways, well, you should find it abhorrent, abortion, especially because of the reasons that people will give to have abortions, or the situations that people find themselves in that result in unwanted pregnancy. 86% of women who have abortions are unmarried. So there's a big, sexual immorality there. That's an issue. right? So if people were you know, having sex within marriage and making reprioritize sex, that it was about love and building families enough, we would see such a rapid decline. There probably wouldn't be clinics open. Probably wouldn't be clinics open. The people would still, I guess people fornicated back then, they'll fornicate now, but it's a big one. Most people have abortions because of life. They want to preserve their lifestyle rather than life preserving measures. Trent Horn said that, so I can't take credit for that line, but I didn't quite quote it exactly, but that's the gist of it, came from him. And it's true. Like, if you're like, oh, well, she needs to have an abortion because of finances. Does the Bible say take no thought what you'll put on, what you'll eat, what you drink, etc.? Like, there's no way I think you can get through the whole Bible and be like, you know what? It would make sense for me to give up my child for financial convenience. So there's things like, if you actually get through the text, that you'd be like, you know what? I've gotten myself into this situation and it's appropriate to kill a baby, get out of it. There's no way. And I'm not gonna go through all the things, but you can imagine, just think about different reasons that women say that they want to have an abortion. And think about different sort of ethics that are related in the Bible. And you might go, you know what? That doesn't actually line up. That doesn't actually make sense. Now, Whoopi thinks any reason doesn't matter, your situation. She doesn't know. She's not a question. You should be able to have an abortion, even if the baby's like 50 weeks old or whatever. That is certainly not the godly view. As far as the thou shalt not murder and them comparing it to, well, people have guns. Sonny, it's illegal to murder people with guns. Like, I appreciate you bringing up thou shalt not kill. I do. But people, it's illegal. Like, if I walked across the street just with an Uzi and started just wreaking havoc, that is not legal. Okay. But they mentioned war. Again, it's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. So if you're so biblically illiterate, why bring it up? Just to vent, I guess. Now, people will say that will push back and say that murder doesn't apply to the unborn because they'll reference Exodus 21, 22 through 25, where it's two men are fighting together and then it causes an accidental like miscarriage, and then you'd pay a fine. But if there's more harm or something, then it's like life for a life, etc. Eye for eye, so on and so forth. But I feel that is so silly, I guess, to bring that up, because an abortion is a deliberate killing, and this is an accident. So basically it's a wrongful death situation, and that causes a miscarriage, and you can pay a fine, and that would be determined by the judge, I was assuming, based on the situation. But it's not what an abortion is, which is premeditated murder. And I would define murder as, in the biblical sense, of you taking the life of a image bearer of God with the authority that you do not have. That's the way that I would look at it. I mean, there's things that are different, permitted, like war and stuff, but that you going and wanting to end someone's life for financial benefit to I don't know, strengthening your relationship status, to get a blank slate, those aren't good reasons to kill someone outside the womb. There's certainly not good reasons to kill someone within the womb. Now there is debate about, well, people say that the child has less value than the mother, because if the mother, they assume, because when the mother is killed, that it's life for a life, but the scriptures actually don't say if there's further harm, that because some people interpret it like there's an early birth, and that the baby may survive, and if it doesn't survive, then it's eye for an eye or whatever. The scripture doesn't say the woman or the baby. It doesn't say that. The law is similar to the Hammurabi law, but just because it's similar doesn't mean that it's the same, because God wanted to establish people to be different. And the law in the Hammurabi is pretty extreme anyway, and not the same. So it's like their version is, if a man has struck a free woman with child and has caused her to miscarry, he shall pay 10 shekels for her miscarriage. If that woman die, his daughter shall be killed. So that's their morality. That's definitely a big flip from, that's a revenge killing. It's not even justice. So that's not what our Bible dictates. But even still, it's an accidental death. It's not the same. So some people would say it makes the child more like property than and not having the same value as the woman. And they'll say that it's the father's property, the man's property. And I'm like, well, that's even more curious, because if the fetus is the father's property, and I don't know if they mean that in the sense that it just belongs to the father versus it's a shoe, like the moral equivalency of a shoe or something like that, which other scriptures wouldn't indicate that to be the case, how God views fetuses in other sorts of ways. If it was the father's property, why would the woman have the right to kill it? that doesn't make any sense either. So again, you don't have that sort of authority to end that life. And the reasoning of why people have different abortions, again, most of them are not to preserve one's life, it's to preserve one's lifestyle. According to Dawkins, it's immoral to have a child with Down syndrome, and you just got to try again. So Whoopi's so silly. All these ladies are silly. That wasn't even I don't think that's even the dumbest thing they said that episode, because I think the eclipse thing was the same episode. So they're paid for their bad opinions, though. And it's not the first time they brought up religion and other things, but really people bring it up to just shame evangelicals and Christians for having their opinion, because they don't want them to take it to the ballot box as they take their opinion to the ballot box. And there are people who believe that the fetus isn't a human being, it's not a person, therefore you can kill it. That is or they'll say they're not alive. All those are beliefs. And we have to debate those battle of ideas with each other, and then apparently at the ballot box. But that's not Whoopi's view. I guess it doesn't matter whether it's a person or not, as long as the woman wants it or whatever. Don't ask questions and just give it to her. That's a pretty wicked opinion. I wish she was so nonchalant when it came to mass and the jab. So anyway, before I let you go, I know I'm a little over. I wanted to play this yesterday, but I didn't get around to it. So I'm gonna play it for you guys today. There was this really good video, which you guys have seen him recently because I played him on The View. And it's I think Coleman Hughes was on Joe Rogan, and he gave his opinion about the Israel war in Gaza and the count of the civilians, which isn't like accurate or possible to be accurate mathematically, but he explains why this is so different compared to a lot of other warfare.
1,000 innocent civilians in response to something that killed 1,200 innocent civilians, and you're continuing to bomb an area into oblivion. That is at least the steps of genocide, or a form of genocide.
So when you say 30,000 civilians, it's not 30,000 civilians that have been killed, though.
How many thousands have been killed?
So according to Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, the number they have is 32,000, but they don't distinguish between Hamas and civilians.
How many members of Hamas are there?
40,000, something like that. I don't think the number is known, but it's tens of thousands. So Hamas says 32,000 people have been killed, civilians and soldiers. Israel says 13,000 soldiers have been killed by Israel. So let's not doubt either number. They could both be inflated. But if both of those numbers are accurate, which they may or may not be, that would be 13,000 soldiers killed, 19,000 civilians killed, which for urban combat in the Middle East is a very normal ratio. It's very distinct from genocide, because genocide is when you're trying to maximize civilian casualties. I think Israel, however imperfectly, is doing the opposite. They're trying to minimize civilian casualties.
That's interesting.
This is the way I would put it, succinctly. If you ask the question, what is unique about this war? What is different about this war than all other wars? It's not the civilian death toll. The ratio of combatants to civilians is, I think it's better than the American armies was when we got ISIS out of Mosul. That was like 10,000 civilians dead to kill 4,000 ISIS. This is 19,000 civilians dead to kill 13,000. What's unique about this war, unlike every other war that I could think of, is you have an army in Hamas that has perfected the art of embedding itself and meshing itself with civilians so that you cannot hit them without hitting the people around them. Other armies have done this, but none have perfected it to the extent that Hamas has. And yes, I agree with all of the absolute tragedy and suffering of the Palestinian people, but what creates that is the way Hamas fights. And either we can say one of two things. We can either say Israel doesn't have a clean shot and they have to let Hamas get away with it because it's too much to bear. But then we are essentially creating a situation where terrorists have found the perfect solution, which is that you can cross the border, go house to house slaughtering your enemies, and then hide behind your own people and they can do nothing about it. It's a perfect strategy. Can we live in a world where we allow that to be an acceptable strategy? I don't think so. And it's very ugly to watch. It's heartbreaking, and I completely understand why people don't think the way I think when they see the videos. I completely get it. But I don't think we can actually live in a world where that's allowed to be a strategy.
I appreciate your perspective. I see what you're saying. You clearly know more about it than I do.
Clearly, but I appreciate Joe giving him the platform to speak on that and put it in that particular perspective. And I don't know what's going to happen. Israel's getting pressured a lot to not finish the mission, go into the stronghold of where Hamas is. A lot of their folks are laid up. The thing that is so puzzling to me, one, I guess there's two things really puzzling to me. The America First crowd is just like, so what? I don't care. I'm like, there are, I think, at least 5 Americans who are still hostages. And of course you had, people who were killed who were like American stuff too. So that's, I don't know why there's so little concern for them and care for them. If you're America First, that's a bit concerning, and there seemed to be an attitude like that even prior to like the numbers starting to rack up, which there was someone who looked into the statistics of the death count that Hamas is basically putting out. The health ministry is run by Hamas and stuff, so you can't really trust the numbers, but they're like, the numbers are statistically not possible for what they're reporting. And I don't know what Israel is reporting, if that's accurate or not accurate. I don't know, as far as their numbers of Hamas fighters who are killed, but they are not distinguishing between like the civilians and their fighters and stuff. So that's obviously an issue. But Rogan having this idea that they're just, just bombing, they could just obliterate everything, but that wasn't what they wanted to do. Going on the ground, puts their people at risk, their soldiers at risk. But anyway, the thing that really perplexes me is, I guess, the outrage toward Israel about this, when I just know that other countries would take, especially the US. Now, I can't speak for what Joe Biden would be or wouldn't be willing to do, because he's a really pansy weak leader. But if this was America and this situation, we would just not allow ourselves to be lectured in this kind of way. We would do what we felt that we needed to do to protect our people. Now, Israel is in a situation where they're surrounded by enemies. They are constantly still being like shot at and stuff. And if they lose, there's not just the fact that Hamas is going to rebuild and have promised they will rebuild and just basically work until they can create another October 7th. It's not just that, but if Israel looks weak there and they lose the support from the world, including America, other folks who are hostile to them know that they really can be beaten, and they'll be weakened, and they'll attack once more. And it just won't be Hamas or be others. So they are facing an incredible crisis, and I don't know if they're going to have the will to finish their mission. But I just know, like I've said it before, I'll say again, I'm not here to be like their comms director, but people's perspective on this stuff, it really puzzles me, and it makes me really concerned. Certainly. Last thing I'll say is when I listened to a space about the Christ is King debate, and Jeremy Boring got on the space, and Lauren Chen hosted it, and Nick Fuentes was on it, and they were talking about, like, everyone is there. A lot of people on the panel were upset about Candace Owens being let go, and people like on the conservative space are saying things like, "Oh, well, if you criticize Israel, you're gonna get the boot or whatever. Oh, it was fine when Candace Owens was talking about the Black community, but she's talking about the Jews. They have to let her go." I think it's more complicated than that. I think her content was not reaching a level that I would have found to be acceptable if I was under the umbrella of the Daily Wire, that doesn't only have commentary, but patterns itself as a news organization. I think some of the things that she was saying didn't quite meet the standards that I'd be comfortable with. But anyway, they're like, "Oh, if you criticize Israel, then you can't work at Daily Wire." And Jeremy Boring's like, "That's not true. I think it's basically a socialist country. Like, I have issues with Israel. Matt Walsh is more like an isolationist." And he didn't mention Ben, but Ben has a video. Like, he did a speech. I don't know if it was a CPAC or somewhere, but it was about things that Israel needs to do differently with their government and their economy and all kinds of different stuff. So they have criticisms of the state of Israel. So people just pretend like they don't say anything about Israel as a country and the things that the policies that they have isn't the truth. So they allow for people to say such things about it, and I'm not convinced that Candace would have necessarily been let go after all the stuff that she said last year. And again, I chronicled it up to like November. You guys can go back and watch that video, but I think some of her reporting on it was questionable, because she had a lot of opinions that were just frankly ignorant. And she very easily was made to be ignorant and insensitive and kind of questionable. Like, I had made a comment on my video after going through Ami's video, her conversation with him, because she was like, "I don't think you think I'm anti-Semitic." And she kind of laughed a bit, and he was just kind of like, but he said, I don't watch an interview with him. He never said that she was anti-Semitic or anything that I could find. But I said after watching that, if she was if there was like a spectrum of anti-Semitic, and they were starting off in the middle of like not being anti-Semitic, I said after that interview I wouldn't have moved the dial toward the not anti-Semitic. Not saying she was after that interview, but after I just wouldn't have been confident like, oh yeah, Candace totally not. I wouldn't have been confident after that discussion that they had. And you can go watch that video to see why I said that. But Jeremy they asked like if someone was critical of Israel, would you hire them? And Jeremy went to like jump to, well, if someone thinks that Israel's like the same as Hamas, then why would I want to hire that person? And Lauren Chen, when she was doing a review of it, she was looking back and was like, why would he jump to that? Because they're not just looking at the war itself and the policies of the state of Israel. They're looking at the sort of moral questions that are coming out of it. And that's one reason I haven't talked a lot about this recently. But when this first became a major story, but beyond all the chaos going on, I was disturbed at like the moral ramifications, the immoral conversations that were coming to light. Like, oh, we don't like what Hamas did, but everything was Israel's fault. Or, oh, we don't like what Hamas did, but everything is justified when you've been occupied. Or like, wait, what did you think we meant by, take the land back or something? There's a river to the... People are just saying all kinds of crazy things. And like, this is just what you have to do to the colonizers. And I'm like, this is really disturbing because I've heard a lot of people just call white people colonizers and throw that term around. If you think anything's basically justified to people you view as colonizers, I'm concerned. We have people chanting death to America in Dearborn. I live in Michigan, guys. That's pretty disturbing. But they were saying disturbing stuff like in Dearborn the entire time after this happened. So people have a skewed sense of morality about this. And so I don't think that Jeremy, when he brought that example up, was so people could be like, oh, that you can't criticize Israel. No, they're concerned about, I think with that example, they're concerned about people's moral clarity on the matter. Like, you can have a disagreement. I'm sure they have plenty of disagreements with Matt Walsh, who actually doesn't care a lot about foreign policy stuff anyway, and would rather focus on stuff at home. But if you're going around making claims about, like, if you're saying they're committing genocide, it's literally not true. So if you're, and she didn't say that they were, but there was a big beef and controversy about her genocide tweet, which she says it was about Brian Mast, but she said that after the fact. She did not say that on Twitter when all that stuff kind of erupted. But Ami did ask Candace like about moral equivalency with Hamas and Israel, and she really she didn't answer the question. So I don't know. Jeremy gave the impression that he fired her in that live. Some people said that her contract was running out and they just maybe decided not to renew. I think she probably thought they were going to renew because she was attached to some other projects like a cartoon or something. So I'm sure they have to reshoot things and rework things or whatever. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they won't replace her, but and they'll just recast her next season or kill off her character. I don't know. But it seemed like people say she was trying to get out of her contract. I don't know about that. I don't know. Maybe because it seemed like other things were kind of lining up. But there is a moral confusion in all this matter. Like going back to The View and talking about abortion and the thou shalt not kill. And they're like, well, people you kill in war. It's not the same. It's not the same. Like if someone invades your land and you gotta defend your borders or something. It's not really the same as you needlessly killing your child because it'll make your life a little better right now. You assume it will. It's really not the same. And I've mentioned how I've been on like lives where people were debating abortion and someone would say, well, what about what's going on in Palestine? It's like, we're not even talking about that. But it's not the same. It's not the same. At all. It's not even the same as if it were indiscriminate bombing. It's because you are deliberately targeting there at that point your child. So, but people just have this huge sense of perception. Anyway, that's what I think Jeremy kind of meant. But if you are lacking in the sort of moral clarity that they feel is appropriate, then why would they keep giving you money? But I do think that Candace said some really kind of things that were questionable toward like anti-Semitic area. So anyway, there could be all kinds of reasons. Maybe the reason that she was fired or let go is because of the French prime minister thing. We don't know. They won't explain. Maybe they will one day. By the way, Candace and Ben are I don't think it'll, I don't know if it'll really happen. But she put out there on social media that she wanted to debate him. And she was kind of asking like, hey, how can we make this happen? I don't even know if she added him or not. I can't remember. Maybe she did, but she's just kind of put it out in the atmosphere about what she wanted to debate Ben on Israel and the definition of anti-Semitism. And he's like, okay, let's do it. Let's do it Monday, which it did not obviously happen Monday. And let's do it Monday in Tennessee in person. Just have a conversation. And but she wanted to have a moderator, and she wanted to not have it at the Daily Wire, which I can understand because she got, let go there. But Ben was like, I know, I can understand why you want to hide behind a moderator, but no, let's just sit down, have a conversation. And then he had to sign off because it was Friday and, sun was going down, Sabbath and all that. And so Jeremy Boring took over the back and forth, and he was like, okay, you can come on and we could, and Candace was like, I live in the UK sometimes, and he's just, people are just like, how's he supposed to be thinking about like, oh, Candace can't come in on Monday for a debate that she threw out there because she's over at the UK. It's, and so she ended up agreeing because he was like, if you don't want, it needs to be in person, needs to be a sit down. If you don't want Daily Wire staff, we'll hire staff, or you can hire staff. You got money, but let's sit down and let's do it. It doesn't have to be the office, but it's gonna be in person. And we can stream it to YouTube and we can stream it to X. And so she said that she agreed, but I don't know if it'll happen. But she, at one point she said something like, we can work out the details like adults or something in text. And I'm like, but you made this public from jump. So it was interesting. That was Friday that happened. But it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if it will happen, but maybe more tea about the breakup will happen at that point. Anyway, I told you my show would not be 2 hours, so we are at 1.5. So let me let you go. Let me let you go. Thank you guys for joining me. Please go to blacktnews.com to look at different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at the website because it does cost a stream and rum and all that kind of stuff. You can also support by checking out different merch as well in the shop. So go ahead and check that stuff out. Thank you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.